Welcome back, csc121 to EX32 or 33. We're going to do 33, so you can do that instead of 32 if you haven't done this yet. If you did 32, you're fine. You don't have to do this one. But we're going to do EX33, and we're going to use the car model for our object-oriented programming exercise. So I'm going to make a new repel, and we'll set this up a little bit different, so just pay attention. I'm going to do a Python here, regular Python, that's 3.61. I'll name it 33, and we're going to make two files. Our main file is actually where we're going to output our information. So we're going to create instances here. I'll just even put instances when we do this, and we're also going to have an import statement that we're going to have here above instances, and then we'll have some print statements and things like that. So our main PY will be where we'll output things, and what we'll do is we'll create our class. Our object class will be in a new file, kind of like a module. So we're going to go over here and just create one, and I'm just going to call it car.py, and I'm going to use lowercase car for the module for the Python file, the script, and I'll use capital C for the class car when I do that. So we're going to build our car class in this file. So let me hit OK, and there's and I'm going to make sure I'm in the car class when I do that. And just like last time, this is easy stuff. We're just going to do class car with a capital C, and then we're going to use our constructor method, and I'll just put a little comment here. So for our constructor method, remember we're just doing the def double underscore init double underscore, and then we're putting self first. We're always putting self first, and then we're going to put some attributes for our car, and magically there they are. There's our attributes for our car. And then I'm also going to set these up as our instance variables, and there's my instance variables. And again, we're going to set this up as a new car, so we're just going to put make, model, color, and price. We're not going to put mileage because it's a new car, and we're not going to put year because it could be 2020, 2019. So we'll just leave that out, and we'll do that for a used car. We'll make a inheritance class or a subclass that's a used car. So we'll do that later. So we'll set these up first. And another thing I'll put in here, I'll put a class variable up here, and I'll just put num cars so we could just keep track of them. Put num cars equals 0 to start, and then every time we construct one or instantiate one, we'll just kind of make it increase here. And when we do this, when we do a class variable, because it's outside of our init method, our constructor method, what we're going to do is have to put the class name in front of it. So instead of self, we're going to put car.numCars, and we're just going to say equals +1. So it'll add up, and I'll spread that out just so it looks a little nicer when we do that. So that is a class variable that we have set up there that's for a class. So that should work for our inheritance class or subclass as well as that one. The idea here, remember, we're creating this in car.py, so we're creating a class. And then if we go to main, where we're actually going to output it, if you wanted to make an instance here, and if I went something like C1 and I instantiated it and used the car class and then put all my things that I wanted to put in here, some information like this, for example, you'll see a red wavy line, and then it'll say something like undefined. That's because we have to import the class from our other file. And to do that, we're going to do from car, from the module car, which is really the Python file. And we don't need to put py in here. That's basically, you don't even want to put py in here. You don't want to put .py. It assumes that that's the module it's coming from. And we're going to say import, and then you're just going to put the class name. And that'll save some typing, so we don't have to put anything in front of it. We won't have to put the module name like car.this or anything like that when we do it. So we already have that class in here, so now it should know it. So that red line went away, so we won't get any error when we do that. And if I run this, nothing's really going to happen because we didn't really print anything out, but it got created. I'll put an area here for printing, and I'll just print it out. If I just want to print out C1, remember if I print out C1, it actually just shows the object at that area, and we can change that. We can print out something that's a little more of a string that makes a little more sense. We're going to change that. There's a str method that we could put in there, and that would have to go back in the car class. And let's put a couple more cars here. So here's some cars we put in here. We called it C1, C2, C3, C4. These are the new cars. The other ones we'll use a U for that. And remember, when you print these out, you could put the attributes that are here. C1.make. If you didn't know the make, you could put the make here, and that should come out as Mercedes. And if you did C5.make, that should come out as Nissan. So we have those things there, and if we want to put anything that puts these things together, we can do that. And we're going to try to make it output a little nicer as well. Also, if we want to do print, and I'll just put a string here, I'll say what I can do after here is I could just do this and then do a comma, use comma notation, and then just put car.numCars, and that should give us the number of cars, which should only be 1. We have 5 now. Let me run that again. It's still saying 1. Well, that's interesting. Why did that not update? If we're saying number of cars, car.numCars, of course, I did this backwards. You're probably screaming at the screen when you saw me do that before, but you were just waiting for that to happen. So plus equals, I thought something looked weird that I had all the equals there together. So plus equals, and now if I run this, and it doesn't matter which one's open when you run it, it'll still output it. It's still going to output main every time. There's numCars 5, so why don't you put the plus first? All right, so we can have the number there. So this is our basically almost like our output file that we're using for main. And what we'll do is we'll create a new inheritance one, and we'll do that inside a car, and we'll make one. And I'll just copy this again, and I'll delete some stuff that I don't need. I'll copy too much first, and then I'll get rid of it. But remember, to make our inheritance class, we're going to call this used, and we'll put car in parentheses because that's the parent, and we don't need this in here. So I'll get the numCars out of there. It'll use this one, and I'll use the instructor method, and I'll inherit make, model, color, and price, but I'm also going to add year. I'll add a new one in here. And remember what we're doing here, and I'll just close this up for right now. And remember, this is the ones that when we actually create the used car, these are the arguments we're going to send. So we'll also put mileage here. We'll make a new one for mileage because that's what you'd be concerned about, buying a pre-owned car. And so now we have more arguments here, but then we could also put in our super, remember it's super parentheses dot, and then our double underscore init. Make sure you don't put int. And you don't need self, and then we're going to just put the ones that we're going to inherit. So we're going to inherit all of these. I could just copy them right out of here. So we're going to inherit the make, model, color, and price attributes from the original, from our parent class that's in here. And then we're going to have new ones, and down here I'll have one for year that we're going to just send in as an argument, and then I'll also have one as mileage. So we do have to create instance variables of any new ones that aren't included in here. So that's going to be mileage. So we'll just put that in when we create them. And we'll just try and see how that works. So I'm going to go to my main.py, and I'll make a new one here. And I'll go through doing this. I'll call this U1, and I'll say equals. Now, this is going to be used, so it's going to come from that class, the used class. And in here I'm going to put a year. So I'll just do this as a string. I'll put 2010, and then I'll use the other ones. I'll make it a Honda. And I'll do pilot, and I'll do silver, mileage, because we're putting mileage in here, and I'll put 26,000, and then I'll put a price, and I'm just using K for price, so I'll just put like 23K in there for price, and then I could go through and make these strings if I want. You can use non-strings, but we're not really doing any math with them. All right, so I have this. So I have a wavy line here, and it says undefined name used. Now that's because it's not importing used yet. It's only importing car. And you might say, well, if it's a child of parent, won't that include it? It won't. You have to indicate that you're going to use it. It is a separate class. It's just using its attributes based on the parent class, but it is actually a separate class because if you look at this, it's a separate class. It's just that thing is just indicating that it has a parent, that it's getting some, for our super method that we're using here, but it is a separate class, so we can just put a comma here instead of making a separate line. We could just put comma used. So now that red wavy line went away, and we'll try this out, and we'll print. Well, number of cars should now change to 6, but let's make a new one here for U1, and I'll do year just to see if that's working out okay. And I'll do a comma, and I'll do U1, and I'll do mileage just to see if that's working out okay. See if it's pulling those new ones that we made from there. So we're going to get the used car, the year, the mileage, and just so we know which one we're talking about, I'll put a comma here, and I'll put U1.make, even though that's the only one we have here is the Honda, but I'll put that in there, and I'll print this out and see if we get any errors. And a number of cars 6, and there's my 2010, 26,000 miles Honda. So that's showing up okay. So that's working okay. So we just had to make sure that we imported our other class, our subclass, is in here, and that we instantiate it by using the name and then put our arguments that are in there. And we'll throw some other ones in here. There's another one, and I'll just change this one and put U2 in there just to make sure that's showing up. This should also be a Honda. I'll just put color so it shows up white, and I'll run that. And now we have the years, we have Honda, we have white, we have number of cars 7, so it's updating number of cars. And then one thing we're also going to do here, we're going to add another method. We'll go back to here, and we could put this down here. We're going to make something that makes it read a little bit better. So we'll make another method here. This will be the def and _str method. This is a built-in method. And in here, we're just going to put self. We're just going to do a return statement. And what we're going to return, we'll return an F string again. This will make it a little bit readable. We'll do F, and we'll basically put, for this is new cars. So what we'll put brand new 2020. So we know that that's the year we're talking about. And I'll put a space. Well, I'll do everything inside here. I'll do a couple things here. Put self.make. I'll have to put these things in here. And I'll just put spaces in between them. So they have self.make, self.model, self.color, self.price. And then it'll print out the instance with this str. It'll print out the instance instead of doing that object with a memory location. It'll actually just print out this string information. And before we even do one for the used, let's just try it out. Let's just see what happens. And I'll do it as this last one here. And what I'll do is I'll just print out C2. And I'll just put C2. Because remember last time it just said object at C2. Let's see what C2 does now. And C2 does brand new, I'll run it again so it's a little longer. Brand new 2020 Acura RDX black and 40,000. And let's see what happens if we print out one of the used ones. And it says brand new, so it's not brand new, so we have to change that. See, it is inheriting that method, that str method from the parent, but that's not the one we want. So we have to make a new one for that. So I could just go back here, we could copy this, and we'll put some different stuff because we actually want the mileage and the year that's in there. So I'll just copy this and I'll put it here and make sure I change my indents here. And instead of brand new, I'll say pre-owned, because that sounds better than used. I'll say pre-owned, and I'm not going to put any year because then we're actually just going to put a year here. So I could just copy this thing is year, and then before price, I'll put mileage. So then we have all our information that relates to the used car, and basically it'll look for that method in its own class first, and if it doesn't find it, it'll look there, and then it'll use that one. That's what happened in that case. It didn't find that method in the used class, but it did use that. So now that we have its own, it'll use this first. It'll use its own from the subclass first before it looks for the parent class. So I'll go to my main, and if I print out U2 again, I'll just close this up so I have a little more room here. And then if I run it again, now I have brand new 2020 Acura, and then I have pre-owned 2010 Honda Accord, white, 75,000. I didn't put miles on there. I could have put miles in here when I did that. And then I have the $ in there, so I'll just run that one more time. And now it looks a little better because it says miles in there, and there's that line for that. So now we're basically using that, using a separate string method to kind of output our instance names a little bit better. We could have made a function to do that, but we have a built-in one that takes all those properties that it can just output in there. So I think that's all we have to do with EX33. Again, this isn't a whole lot of fun. We don't have turtles moving around. We're not doing any neat interface stuff like we were doing with TK-Inter, and we're not playing a Pong game, but we are learning about object-oriented programming. So again, just to review this one, we did create a car.py file, which is our module. That's where we defined our classes, our car class, our used class, which is actually a subclass of this one. And when we create these init methods or the constructor methods for our subclasses, we put basically all the arguments that we want first, the ones that we're going to send when we create the instance, and then we can actually bring in the arguments that we already have from the parent class, so we don't have to use them, but we do have to create new instance variables for any ones that we don't have, and we created separate behaviors or methods here, which are actually functions inside of a class for those, and it'll use the one from the child class first, and then it'll use the one from the parent if it doesn't exist, if it's looking for one. So that's all we really need, and we do have this class variable that we were using, and it was updating the number of cars each time. So if whether they're used or whether they're new, it was basically updating them. 7's all we had, so we didn't update any more at this point. So that's all we really need to do, and that's all you really need to do for EX33. Again, not a whole lot of work, just a little new way of doing things, and we'll see if we could do anything interesting with this, other than just creating cars and creating employees, which isn't very fun, but we'll see if we could do a little bit more. So that's EX33. You can just share this with the share button and put it under the 3233 coursework. I just left that as one assignment, so you could just put it under there, and that's all you have to do for this one. So there's just 2 files in here, the main.py, which is your output, and the car.py, which is your class definitions that are in here. So that's EX33.